Are you lost in the chaotic whirlwind of day-to-day busyness? Do you yearn for a deeper sense of meaning and purpose in your life? Welcome to Be You, Your Story, Your Purpose, the podcast dedicated to empowering women on their journey of self-discovery and finding their true purpose through their own story. I'm your host, Brenda Simmons. Welcome to the Be You, Your Story, Your Purpose podcast. Today, we have a wonderful guest on our podcast, and her name is Bliss Sawyer. Bliss is a loan officer, and she also has a really amazing hobby. And I'm going to let her introduce herself and tell us a little bit about herself, and then we'll get into the discussion. Welcome, Bliss. I'm so glad that you can make it with us today.
Thank you, Brenda. I just am honored that you asked me to be on your podcast. I think it's just a great concept, and we all need to share our stories and hear other people's stories because that's what motivates me. So again, you said my name is Bliss Sawyer, and I started in the mortgage business in 1991, so 100,000 years ago based on emotional impact. But I've been doing that a really long time. I've been a branch manager, a top producer. And then for about 10 years, I also ran a marketing and sales coaching company geared mainly towards mortgage, in the mortgage space, but also some in the real estate agent space, and did a lot of travel and teaching and one-on-one coaching. A couple of years ago, I decided I didn't want to balance so much in my life, so I'm no longer doing that. I am just originating. And also that kind of ties in with that crazy hobby you mentioned that I have. So that's kind of my work history. Personally, I have 4 kids that are mostly adult acting, and then 4 perfect grandchildren. And so just at a good phase in my life right now. Empty nest is definitely a good thing where I'm at. I love it. And so hobby-wise, I do a lot of cycling. I've been doing that for a number of years. And about, oh my goodness, it's probably been 20 years ago, I set a goal to bike 50 miles in all 50 states. One, because I do love to travel, but it also kind of got my husband and I into what's called bike packing. And so we now do extended bike trips only with our bikes and with all of our gear on our bikes. We even camp and cook and all of that, and it's all on our bikes. And so this year we did our first overseas trip, and we did England and Scotland
Awesome.
This summer. So yeah.
Okay, we are going to dissect that because I love cycling too. And
good. Everyone should.
I know. Oh, it's just, I love the wind. That's what really does it for me. But I want to first start with how you got into lending, because you started pretty young. So how did you even... So typically people who are that young, they don't know what they want to do. So how did you even find it and fall into it?
So my husband was a Russian linguist in the military, and we'd been living overseas for a number of years. And so we got out of the military, we moved to Logan, Utah, and he was going to be attending Utah State University. And it was really, well, his skills as a Russian linguist back in 1991 weren't super useful in the job market. And so we decided that he was going to go to school full time and be at home as much as possible with our 2 little babies at the time. And so I had been a secretary since I was in high school, actually. And so I was looking for just a secretary job because I knew I could do that, and nobody was hiring. And I finally got a job as a receptionist at Academy Mortgage, Logan, Utah, in 1991. And after a year, I moved into processing, went to a different company, moved into originating, and then a couple of years later, moved into management. And so that's kind of history. I really, truly fell into it. I had no idea. I didn't even know how to spell mortgage. It was just the craziest thing. And then who knew that I would be good? Really, because really mortgage origination is about sales. And sales can be taught. But to be a high producer, especially throughout all my coaching, I firmly believe you really have to have this passion and drive, almost a competitive thing with yourself, right? I love to see other people succeed, even in my industry. I love to see my coworkers succeed, but I'm extremely competitive with myself. And that's kind of my drive and my passion. And there's no way I could have known that before I plopped into this industry.
Right.
So what my dream job back then was to be a secretary at the university because it had great benefits,
Right.
where my husband was going to be going to school. And what a great thing that that didn't work out. What a great thing. So, yeah.
Wow. So what is it that you love the most about loan originating?
Well, first and foremost, working with people. So I just had a closing recently where this lady, and she's blind, and her husband is a basically a janitor. And for 40 years, they have rented.
Hmm.
40 years they have rented
Wow.
in the LA area. And they have some kids now that live here in Utah. And so they reached out to me. They wanted to buy a house here because he'll be retiring in a couple of years and she wants to live closer to have a home closer to family. And so we helped them buy their first home. And oh
Wow.
my goodness, it was so amazing. And she was just this grateful soul that touched me. And so that's really truly what I love about it. The problem solving
Hmm.
of taking someone that has a unique income or asset situation, or even a unique credit situation, right? And how do we
Right.
figure all of those moving parts to help you get that goal, achieve that goal of home ownership? So, first, that is definitely my top reason for loving this industry. Second, absolutely is going to be the flexibility of it, not only time wise, but also financially, because I only make loans when I no, I only make an income when I do loans, right? Commission based,
Right.
basically self-employed. And
Yeah.
so there isn't a cap on my income if I'm willing to put in the work. And that speaks to
Right.
me. And then so there's the money freedom, and then there's also the time freedom, especially with what we went through with COVID and how everything really became seamless to work from anywhere. And
Right.
so I have, you know, 9 o'clock at night, if that works for someone, that's when we do a Zoom call to go over their loan options, right? And so in traveling, I also have a loan partner, Tyson Cook, who, when I am on those crazy bike trips, right, I've got a team that supports me and kind of steps in and does anything that I would do if I were here. And so the flexibility of this job is so perfect for my stage of life and where I am, that the thought of retiring isn't even interesting to me, even after doing this for 32 years. So,
Wow. So for those of who are listening who don't understand what a loan originator is and what, how that all works, could you go through that
sure.
process for me?
Well, right now it kind of sucks because interest
Right.
rates are at 8%.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I have noticed that people's wages are going up, right? It's just the shock of seeing a $3,500 payment is pretty tough.
Right.
But really, what a loan originator does is they're the first person that talks to a potential home buyer or even someone that wants to refinance their current mortgage, right? We're the first person that they talk to say, hey, let's take a look what those numbers look like, right? What are your credit scores? What does your income look like? What are your assets? What loan programs do you fit into? And then showing them the numbers and the loan options for their situation. So then they have the ability to look at that and say, all right, this is definitely something I'm comfortable with right now. Or maybe it's something where they need to do a little bit of work to get their assets to a point where they've got a down payment, or maybe their credit scores are a little bit low. And so we give them the strategies to improve their situation so that in 3 or 6 months, they're ready to buy a house. I always tell people that I'm never going to say no to you, that you can't buy a house. I might say not right now, and then I'm going to give you the steps to getting to the point where you can buy a house. So that's really what a loan officer does, is work hand in hand with that consumer that wants to buy a house.
I love that. So let's say you've got a client who needs to do a little bit of work to get ready to purchase a home. Walk me through, how does that mentorship work for you? Like, are
Mhm.
you meeting with them weekly? Like, how does that
Sure.
work?
So every situation is just a little bit different,
Right.
right? So for example, I met with someone yesterday. She's an older Hispanic lady that doesn't speak English. So her niece came in with her. She brought in her paperwork. We went through everything, and she doesn't qualify on her own. but I said, this is about what your payment would be. Are you comfortable? Do you have,
Right.
a lot of times people have other, in her cases, she has other income sources that I can't use on paper to qualify her. So
Ah,
she's comfortable. So then I said, all right, let's talk about your options for a co-signer. So she has a son and a daughter that both want to help her get into a house. So in that case, I'm going to be working with multiple people
mm-hmm.
to get her to the place where she can buy a house. If it's a situation where someone needs to improve their credit, we're going to set up a kind of we have some drip campaigns so they get some emails with some suggestions. I'm going
Right.
to be calling them every so often saying, hey, how's it going paying down that credit card? Or
Right.
another situation, I have a young man that has really good income. He has money in the bank, but he's actually super smart. He never got credit cards or car payments.
So he has no credit,
I love that. I hate
but
that I have to tell you to go get credit cards. So he and I
yeah,
have been talking since January, and he went and got two little credit cards, and he now has a 750 credit score. So we talked about once a month how that process was going, and then now he's actively looking at this point to buy a house. And
that's
so,
wonderful.
like I said, every situation is different. And based on what your needs are, is going to determine how often I contact you. But I always tell people you can reach out to me anytime if you want an update about interest rates or about have questions about what you're paying off or what this is going to how this is going to impact your credit scores. So here's a funny story about that because
Okay.
Tyson and I both have this conversation with people. Reach out to us anytime. So we had some clients that were buying a house and it was summer and they call them up and they're like, all right, we're in Wyoming and we want to buy some fireworks. Is that okay? Because we tell people, hey, if you're in the process of buying the house, I'm going to kind of be like your mom
Yeah.
and you need to run everything by me, right?
Right.
We say it kind of funny, but we kind of mean it too. And so
Right.
Tyson asked me, so are you using a credit card to pay for them? They're like, no, we have the cash. He's like, you're good. You go right ahead and buy your fireworks. But I love that they were so intent on the ability to buy a house. They wanted to make sure they didn't have any missteps.
I
And
love that.
that's what's really important because I will never forget the couple that came in and met with me. We pulled their credit, looked at their situation. The month before they had bought a truck. And this is probably 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
This is common now, but back then, not so much. They bought a truck with an $800 a month payment on that truck. And she turned to
Wow.
and they didn't qualify for a house at that time with an
Just
$800
because of
credit
that
limit. And
payment.
she looked
Yeah.
at him and she said, and she wasn't super mean about it or aggressive. She just said, so that basically means that truck, how did she phrase it? It was something like, instead of a house, we have a truck. I'd rather have a house. And so, and I think, what if we'd had a conversation a month before? What if they had met with me before that? And so the impact of talking to a lender, I don't care how, if you think you're sorry. If you think you're a year away from buying a house, I would still love to have a conversation with you. One, I'm still going to be doing this in a year, and I'm happy to
Right.
help you in a year. That's when I would earn my income from working with you. But I'm happy to work with you a year in advance and have no income because I want to help you be in the very best place you can be when you are ready to buy a house.
I love that. And I love your dedication. Your Wyoming story reminded me of a situation. As a realtor, I was under contract with a client, or sorry, my clients were under contract with a home. And so when you're under contract, you don't want to finance anything. Like you
Right.
just want to keep all of your finances exactly the same. Well, he
Mm-hmm.
called me up and I was so grateful that he did. And he said, it's Super Bowl weekend. There's this TV that's on sale, but we'd have to finance it. And I just said, don't, don't do that
Don't do
because
it.
you're already,
That TV is not worth
it's
it.
not worth your house. I said, there will be sales after this.
Yeah.
Take advantage of those. And so I know from my own experience, it's so helpful when clients will call
Right.
you with questions and so I love that you are available
Yeah.
and want to work so closely with them. That's just amazing. I love it. So I've got a question. I can your love for what you do just because I've watched you work and I've watched you share and I've had clients go with you before and I can see that you really have a passion for what you do. So, what is it about helping people get into homes that brings meaning to your life?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think anytime we do something that helps someone, our life has more meaning. So my husband had recently retired and he volunteers at the food bank. And, it doesn't matter if you're doing something that you get paid for or not. If you're doing something that means something to someone else, then it gives
Yeah.
you greater meaning. So I've been involved a little bit with Habitat for Humanity, but I'm realizing that something that I want to be more involved in because it touches on that part of me where housing is such an uh, in the hierarchy of needs, right? Housing, safe
Mhm.
and affordable housing is such a right. It should be a right to everybody to have safe and affordable housing, right? So that's
Right.
where I'm going to put my efforts as I move into retirement down the road, right?
Mhm.
I want to still be involved in some way with helping people have housing because it gives my life so much meaning knowing that people have safe and affordable housing. Well, affordable
Quote unquote,
is
right?
quote unquote right now. Some is more affordable than others. But yeah, anytime you do something where you fill a need, you fill a need in someone else, you fill the need in yourself to have meaning. And so I think that just all ties together for me, right? Even the mundane parts of my job, the paperwork, or right now I'm doing my continuing education, which for me to sit through online classes because I do have ADHD, um, it's torture. It is literally torture, but
Right.
still part of this, of who I am and of this career that I have of helping people have a home. And
Right.
so even though it's torture for me, it's still, I really actually don't mind it because it's still part of that overall part of who I am and what I love to do.
Right. It gets
So
you to that
it makes the
goal.
hard things not as hard.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. I do a lot of funny little TikToks and videos to make fun of my industry. And I make fun of underwriting, but I actually adore my underwriters. They're fabulous. It's just it's part of this system that we have to go through, and it's okay to poke fun at it.
Well, and I actually love it whenever you come out with a reel or a TikTok, and I always pause to watch it because they're so well done.
Oh,
And
thank
they just
you.
always
It's
make me
silly.
giggle.
I
Right? It's
embarrass my
super
kids,
fun.
but it's all right.
Well, I mean, that's why you have kids,
It
right?
is. Absolutely.
I love that. So I love that you were able to step away from that though for a little bit and start a a coaching business. So talk to us a little bit about that. I know you don't do it anymore, but
Mhm.
what was it about that that made you want to do it, and what did that mean to you?
Oh, such a good question. So back in my husband graduated with his PhD in 2004. And, for the 2 years leading up to that, I knew we were living here in Utah, working for the same company I work for now. But I knew that him getting a job could really be anywhere in the US and most likely would not be in Utah. And I was getting a little bit burnt out at the time of doing loans. And
How long have you been doing it
since
then?
since 91.
So you're talking like
So
15,
12 years, yeah,
12,
like
15
that.
years.
And so, and I think, and I also had been doing a lot of teaching because when you're a high producer in any industry, you're just naturally asked to teach other people. And I'm a
Right.
branch manager, so done mentoring and stuff with that. And so I had kind of fallen into this role of some informal teaching and coaching. And so as we were preparing to move, we ended up moving to Texas and then Oklahoma. So we were gone about 7 years. And so I'm preparing to do that. I'm like, hey, I actually think I want to start a company. And so I just prepared um, basically some training programs, some
Hmm.
live events, and some courses that I would sell back when there were DVDs,
Right.
surprisingly, um, and some materials that I could sell
Right.
and courses. And so it's kind of dipped my toes into it a little bit before we moved. And then I went full time on that when we moved because I had 4 kids from ages 5 to 16. And I wanted to really be present for them as much as possible. I didn't want to try to start originating in a brand new area.
Right.
because I knew that what that would intake. And so I started doing the coaching and the training, and I did travel some, which honestly, when you have 4 kids, it's not a bad thing to go sit in a hotel by yourself for a day and a half.
Nope, not a bad thing.
And so it was a really, really good mix for our family and a really good opportunity. And I actually kept doing it even after I moved back to Utah because I loved it so much. And I feel like it made me so much better of a loan officer, loan originator, by doing it. So I kept doing it for a couple of years. And there's still times now when I miss it.
Hmm.
But the idea of really crafting marketing materials and helping
Hmm.
other people find their own voice. Because how I do things, or Brenda, how you do things, is not going to directly translate into how someone else can succeed at the same job, right? We
Right.
all have to find
Right.
our own voice and our own way of doing things. And so I really just loved helping people say, okay, here's some ideas. How do we make this fit you? Right.
Right.
And then there's also the other part of time management and motivation. There's no lack of ideas for sales and marketing, none for any industry. There's millions out there, especially with the internet, right? What keeps most people from succeeding is the motivation and time management skills to do the things that will bring in the business. And so
Right.
that's probably what we worked a lot on. And that's what coaching really, really is there for, is the accountability piece. And so I enjoyed all of that. It was such a great experience. And it was also, I think, really good during those years that my kids saw me, build a business and work a business. You know, I just think there was just a lot of ripple effect from it that was really positive.
That's amazing. I really love how you pivoted according to what your family needed.
Yeah,
It wasn't necessarily a career shift. I mean, it was a career shift, but it wasn't that wasn't the purpose of
yeah,
it, right?
right. True.
So I love how you were able to sit back and go, okay, what does my personal life need that I can then translate to my business life?
Yeah.
So that's amazing. So what did you I just think it's important to identify, you know, so many women work and so many, are out of the home or in the home or whatever the situation may be. But what was that dynamic like trying to raise your 4 children and start and run this business?
Yeah.
Like, were you able to incorporate them into your business at all? Or like, what did that look like?
No, not really. Like the products that I sold, the marketing materials that I sold, they would help me put them together, right?
Right.
I think that as women, it is one of the most difficult thing is the struggle to
Yeah.
feel like you are enough in both family and in business because we're never perfectly in balance, right? Uh,
Right.
there are times when you're going to be a lot busier in your business, and there's time when family is going to be more important and busier. So it's okay to be out of whack sometimes. I have an extremely supportive husband. I don't like to clean bathrooms. Never have. I need to have a clean bathroom, don't get me wrong, right? But that's just something that he just always did. And there were
Yeah.
certain things that like I love finance. I love taking care of our family finances and our investments. And so, if I die, let's just say he's in trouble, because he
Right.
doesn't know. I try to tell him where everything is. But that's my strong suit, right? And then
Right.
like these bike packing trips that we go on, there's a lot of logistics into them, more than you can even imagine. And so he takes care of all of that. He really enjoys doing that. And so we just have found where our strengths are. And when he was working on his PhD, and for part of it, I was pregnant with our fourth, and our life was out of whack, right?
Yeah.
His mom and dad used to come and stay with us for about a week every 5 weeks or so. They lived about 2 hours away, and that just was. So I think extended family is really, really, really important,
Yeah.
because my mother-in-law would just come and I could just breathe for a little bit, right?
Yeah.
She'd love on my kids, and she, we used to bake her, don't do her laundry, but she's like, I want to cook your dinner, right? So I was very, very blessed to have support in so many different ways. And I feel like my kids are all adults now. They're 24 to 36. Um, but I always felt like my kids were proud of me, that they looked at what I did and maybe they didn't, my one son probably 4 times asked me if I was a real estate agent. But I don't even know if they really understood what I did, what they were growing up.
Right.
They were good kids that way. But I also worked really hard, and I was not always successful at it. But being there for any event or thing they had, and as phones became more popular, I was definitely caught up in always looking at my phone.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have tried very hard, to be present, to look at them. I
Right.
would catch myself just going, they'd be in the middle of saying something, and I would just look like, what the heck? There's no reason. It's just a
Right.
habit. And so I think as women that we have a really heavy mantle, and especially if you're working from home, because unfortunately, the thought is you should still be able to do everything at home because you're
Mm-hmm.
there, but don't be
Right.
afraid to ask for help. If
Right.
if you're working and you've got the ability, have someone clean your house, right? There's so many ways we can save time nowadays. It's really amazing what we can do to save time.
Right. I love that. And I love how you talked about things not being in balance. I mean, if you really think about it, when is it ever in balance? You
It's
know,
not. And so
it's
don't
not.
beat
And
yourself
I
up for it. Yeah.
right. And I love this analogy of, if you look at yourself walking, you're either balanced on one side or on the other. There's very, very little time when you're walking that you're actually fully balanced.
Yeah. But you
But to
still get
have
where you're
forward
going.
progression,
Yeah.
you have to walk. That means
Yeah.
it's going to be out of balance, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's
That's
how
such a
you
great
get.
analogy. I love that.
Isn't that awesome? I know, I love that so much. It's not mine. I stole it from somebody else,
Good
but I
one.
can't tell you who. So so that's awesome. Okay, so I really want to get into your hobby because I just
Yeah.
think what you do is amazing and comes from my own love. And so a love of cycling because I went on a bike hike when I was
Oh,
15. So I biked from
fun.
San Jose, California to Disneyland. Most of it was
Oh,
along the PCH, the Pacific Coast Highway.
you seriously did that when you were
I
15?
did that when I was 15. I was almost 16. It was honestly one of the best things that I've ever done in my entire life because it wasn't just a 10-day event. It was a 2-year event.
Mm-hmm.
And I paid for everything myself and
Yeah.
I did all of the work, training and
Well,
everything.
and I
And
think
so
the planning and the anticipation is just as valuable as the
absolutely.
event. And this is something else I've learned, is that, so you know how we put money in the bank and in investments to earn dividends
Mm-hmm.
for our retirement, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever. Our memories pay us dividends.
Yes.
So I like to make little videos and post about my trips, not because I need other people to say, "Oh, you're so cool." I really do it. One, because I'm not with my extended family and I want to share with them. But
Right.
two, I go back and look. And sadly, I've had a couple of concussions, and I don't want to talk about that. But I do worry in my later years about my memory.
Right.
And I want to have those videos and those pictures. Even now, just last night, I was scrolling, looking for something in my past posts, and I just started scrolling through my Scotland and England pictures just from this summer,
Yeah.
and my feeling of happiness went up,
Right.
right? I know we talk
It
about
puts you
social
right back
media.
into that. Yes.
We talk about social media causing more depression and anxiety, which I actually agree with. But looking back on our own adventures in life and our own positive things is really, really rewarding. So to me, the dividends of memories and of experiences are extremely valuable.
Right.
And I think that we don't, because honestly, traveling is difficult. There is a lot of hardships. I know you just went on a big cool trip.
Yeah.
But on my trip this summer, we had some I ended up getting an ambulance ride in Cornwall, England, for an infection in my gallbladder and having some time in the emergency room. And, were we going to have to stop our trip that we dreamed about for years?
Right.
Or what was the cost going to be? I felt, I really, I told, there were two nurses at the campsite, that came to help me. Anyways, long story. But I told the one, I said, I have birthed 4 kids. My first one was almost 10 pounds. I know pain.
Right.
This is worse.
Wow.
So, just mentally going through all of that. And then luckily I was able to continue riding. And then I had a major break on my bike.
Mm-hmm.
Those 2 events were really traumatic and really negative events. But in retrospect, and even a day after, even the night after the bike broke, we were like, all of these miracles happened. And these people that were put in our path to help us made those experiences such a positive thing. And I just find it amazing that the people I met and the help I received was probably one of the best things about our trip this year.
I love that.
So we
I love your
can't
story about your bike breaking down. Can you tell our listeners what happened there? Because so many things were miraculous
Okay, I'll
about
try to do
that.
a short version.
Okay. Okay.
So I have arthritis, and so I had to this year upgrade my bike to electronic shifters because I have pretty bad arthritis right here.
Mm-hmm.
And it was expensive, but why do I need a retirement account? Whatever. I can live in a cardboard box.
Bike, retirement, right?
So I spent a lot of money upgrading because I love my touring bike. It fits me. It's awesome. So we were on this wooded path, and it was a paved path, but it was really dark because their trees just kind of came over it.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to kind of climb this little incline, and there was a stick, and I didn't see it, and it jammed into my derailleur, my very expensive derailleur, and it snapped it into like 3 pieces.
Oh.
And I just stopped. And you also have to understand we have a lot of gear on our bikes, and so it was actually even hard to push my bike. Things were jammed into things.
Wow.
And so we look on our phone, and it says there's a bike shop like 300 yards away around the corner. And I'm like, oh my goodness.
What are the chances of that?
What are the chances? Well,
Right.
it was a Polish grocery store. Bike shop hasn't been there for years. Thank you.
Oh.
So we're like, what do we do? We're trying to figure out what to do. We're in a very small town. There's nothing else around. All of a sudden, this man pulls over in a little minivan that says it's a taxi on the side. Now, first of all, thank goodness I'm in England and I speak the language. I will just say that.
Right.
And he was looking at something on his phone, and that's why he had pulled over. So I go up to his door and I'm like, hey, I have a problem. Do you know of a bike place nearby? And he's like, it's not really a bike shop. It's a guy that fixes bikes. And he says, I have to pick up someone in 30 minutes, but I could take you there. So first of all, my husband lets me get in the car with a very strange man. We have 2 phones, but only one of them is connected to cellular data.
Okay.
Yeah, not safe. That's only the first of a couple times that day. So he takes me over. This guy is a guy that does glass work, makes windows. But during the pandemic, he started fixing bikes as extra job. He's like, looks at my bike because it's kind of a unique setup. He's like, oh yeah, I can help you. He's like, so you need to go. There is a bike place around, I don't know, 15 miles or so from here that is a true bike shop. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, the guy that's helping me, and you have to know we have 2 bikes with a lot of gear. He's like, well, I know a guy that has a van. He's like, go back. And it's like, all right, can you tell him we're at the Polish market? So I have my Mr. Taxi guy take me back to the Polish market, just hoping the guy with the van can show up. I don't even know his name. Mm-hmm. Guy in the taxi won't take any money from me. Now, we're doing kind of a unique ride called the Jog, Land's End to John O'Groat, southern tip of England to northern tip of Scotland. It's kind of famous. Some people drive it. People have walked it. It's like 1,200 miles, and it's super cool. So people, when they hear what we're doing, they kind of buy into it, right?
Right.
Or they tell us we're idiots. One of those 2 things. So I go back to my husband. I'm like, I think somebody in a van's picking us up, but I don't really know. So literally 2 minutes later, my new BFF with a moving van with a hydraulic lift.
No way.
He lifts our bikes into his empty van, and he drives us to this bike shop. We made him take some money because, like, dude, this is your business. We go, now this is a bike shop with this man. He's like, yeah, I don't have these parts. It would take about 3 days to get them in. So we're thinking, do we buy one of his bikes? but it
Right.
might not fit me. I have arthritis in my knees. If a bike doesn't fit me right, it can be bad.
Right.
If you guys don't know, England and Scotland is literally just hill after hill after hill,
Yeah.
hell after hell. And no, that's not true. And so he starts calling bike shops. We're headed towards Manchester, and there are a lot of shops in that area. So he literally spends an hour calling every bike shop he can find. And we're
Wow.
just like, what do we do? If we get too far off our route, it messes things up.
Right.
Noise. So he ends up finding another bike shop that is about 10 miles away that doesn't carry it, but they have a bike in being serviced that has it. They
Wow.
call up the owner of that bike. He says this, we have this a couple from the US. They're doing La Jog. Could she buy your component, your derailleur, and can she have it? And she will buy you a brand new one that will be here in 3 days and we'll put it on for you. He says yes.
Oh
So
my
now
goodness.
I have to get 10 miles from here. We're having a hard time figuring out. Same guy that helped us. He's like, all right, let me call my employee that's not working and see if he'll come take our little shop vehicle, because they're also an auto shop. And if he'll take you. So he comes on and this guy won't take any money.
Wow.
Calls his guy, comes up. He only fit my bike. It's a Subaru. So my husband says, that's okay. I'm going to bike the 10 miles.
Oh my god.
I
Well,
take the
right.
phone that works halfway there, and we put all the gear in the Subaru as well. Halfway there, I'm like, oh crap, I've got the bike tire, I've got all the mechanical stuff. If something happens to my husband, he doesn't have a working phone, he doesn't have a spare tire. I just got in the car with someone that's a little rough around the edges. Let me just
Right.
tell you that.
Yeah.
And we're just like, well, whatever. Now, I end up for about 40 minutes having a lovely conversation with this man who's a little rough around the edges. I find out about his son who he raised. His dream is to go to the Dugway races here in Utah.
Oh wow.
Never been outside of England. I'm like, you can stay at my house. You can even use my car. If you can get to the US, you have a place to stay.
Right.
Because he just was so kind and nice to me. Drops me off. They take my bike in. At this time, I'm like, okay, I hope my husband doesn't get hit by a truck.
Right.
They fix my bike. It takes about it takes about 10 minutes because now I'm 50 minutes into it, maybe 50, maybe 15 minutes. The guy takes my bike out to test it. And as he's driving around his building, my husband pulls up.
Oh my goodness.
The timing of all of this. So the whole crisis put us 4 hours behind. We like to get to our campsites around 4 p.m.
Hmm.
Get to our campsite at 8 p.m. I crawl into I don't even take a shower. I am so exhausted. I eat some whatever food and I crawl in and just go to sleep. What a day. But
Wow.
the miracles were the people and their kindness for us. The guy that made all the phone calls, he actually had been a lacrosse player for Scotland and had traveled the US when he was younger. And he said, no, I actually offered him money. He's like, no. He says, honestly, the kindness that was shown to me when I was traveling the US, I still remember it and I'm just paying it forward.
Wow. That's
So
awesome.
yeah, our trials in life sometimes are our best memories
Yes.
in whatever crazy, demented way it happens.
I
So
love that.
not that I ever want it to happen again. Please no.
Right. Right.
I see a stick and I have some PTSD.
Right. So this was your first cross country or overseas
It was
trip.
international.
So where else have you biked
So
and where do you want to go?
I've got 11 more states to do.
Yeah.
But next year we are going to do Norway because Norway is very, very difficult. I'm from Alaska, and especially southern Scotland and Norway are very similar to where I grew up. And so Norway is probably one of the most beautiful places on the planet. And
Yeah.
I am 56. And so I need to do Norway before my body deteriorates anymore. So we'll do Norway next year.
Oh, that's amazing. How many days does it take?
So I will take about 6 weeks because to go that far, that's really what makes it worth it.
Right.
And again, I have a team here at the office. So my deal with especially Tyson, my loan partner, is I won't retire if you just keep letting me do my big trip every year. It's a win-win.
Right. It is a win-win. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that so much. What's the biggest takeaway that you have from doing such a big trip like that?
It's so interesting. I have a mind that races. Because I do have ADHD, my mind is always looping. Good,
Hmm.
bad, ugly, it's always going. It's not easy to be married to me or be my children. We'll just state that, but they do love me. Um, when I am on those trips and on my bike, and I think you can do it on a smaller scale. You don't have to go to England for 6 weeks. But my have such a single focus. It doesn't do me any good to think about anything else. It's so easy for me to be in the moment when I'm doing those things
Hmm.
that I have a very difficult time doing in my normal day-to-day life. And it actually caused me this year, my word for the year is mindfulness because I'm trying to find small ways, like putting my phone away from me, reading nonfiction books. I'm trying to find ways to be mindful and in the moment in my everyday life because I've experienced it on a greater scale. And I'm so grateful for that.
Wow. I love that so much. Love it, love it. Awesome. All right. So, Bliss, how would you sum up your purpose? You've got
Okay.
this business that you've got that's thriving. You've got a loan partner and a team around you. You have this amazing hobby. What do you find is your purpose?
So I knew you were going to ask that question, and I've been pondering, and I couldn't come up with anything concrete. But as you just asked it, I did. So from the time some of my kids were little, and I was a working mom, I always said, when I am old and sitting in my rocking chair, even if I have regrets, I still want to say I lived my life the very best I could in the moment. Like I look back at I have one child that was pretty rebellious. And I look back and I definitely, with the knowledge I have now, I could have done things differently that would have been better for him because he also has ADHD.
Right.
So do I have regrets? Yes. But in the moment, I was doing the very best I could with the information I had. I don't want to be sitting in my rocking chair saying, I wish I had done it differently. I could
Right.
say I I could have done it differently if I'd known differently. But in the moment,
Right.
I'm living my life, especially now where I do have more time freedom, financial freedom. I'm living my life in a way that fulfills me, even on the hard days.
I love that. I think so many times we look back at things that have happened to us and go, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that, and but then, and I've done this so many times, but it wasn't really until I stopped and said, okay, did I do the best that I could with the knowledge that I had at the moment?
Yeah.
And 99% of the time,
The
the
answer is
answer
yes.
is absolutely yes.
Well, and because
Yeah.
most of us are on in that exact same boat. And I
Right.
can't remember the exact phrase that I heard, but having regrets about the future or anxiety about the past are
Hmm.
both negative things.
Right.
Living in the moment is the most positive that you can be. And
Yeah.
I like that.
I love that that's your purpose. I just think that's amazing. So describe to me, I think you've done like the big things. What is a small thing that you do every day that where you're living that?
So I actually started doing this when that beautiful child of mine was going through his very, very rebellious teenage years, is deep breathing.
Hmm.
It is so simple. It's just in through my nose between 4 and 8 counts, depending on how anxious I might feel, and then slowly breathing out my mouth. And when I breathe in, I'm extending my stomach because as women, we're always holding in our stomach, right?
Yep.
And as
It's
women,
right.
especially, I think we do a lot of shallow breathing, which
Hmm.
causes your body to be in a more tense state. So I do every day. There's a few times during the day, actually when I'm first waking up and before I go to sleep. But during the day, I will just do some really deep breaths. And that will bring me kind of centered back to that moment.
I love that. What a great tip. I just think that's fantastic. Do you have any other words of wisdom to share with our listeners, things that you have learned throughout your life?
Yeah, I do actually. And because I'm so focused on this right now, experiences are so much more important than anything material you can buy.
Mm-hmm. I agree 100%.
And I think that relates very much to debt because I see a lot of people that cannot afford to buy a house simply because of the amount of debt they carry.
Mm-hmm.
There have been studies done with car ownership. People that own very expensive cars versus people that own Hondas versus people that own Chevy Impalas that are 15 years old, right?
Right.
Their happiness level. When they first purchase the vehicle, there is definitely a higher spike for the luxury cars, but as time goes on, the happiness level of the people that own different levels of cars is not any different. In
Hmm.
fact, it's worse if you carry debt for the higher priced cars. And so if we can live our life in a way where we are spending our money on experiences rather than going into unnecessary debt for things, if you can buy outright a beautiful, nice car, you go right ahead and do it. But when we're considering taking on debt for material items, I think we need to be very careful to not sacrifice our experiences and our ability for time and money to create experiences. And so this also goes with your house, right? If you want to and you can afford to buy a $2 million house, but that means you need to work and be gone from your family more, you are sacrificing experiences and memories for that house. So you just have to make sure you're aware of that. So I'm
Right.
all about experiences now.
I love that. Well, and I agree 100% with that. And I've told my family so many times I don't want anything for Christmas. I just want a memory.
Yeah.
Like
I
let's go
like
do
that.
something fun,
I like that.
So I love
Yeah.
that. Definite words of wisdom. Thank you so much, Bliss, for sharing with us. And thank you everybody for listening today. We sure appreciate it. And just remember that your purpose is in your story. Until next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Brenda.
Celebrate your dreams, let them take flight, for you are a star, shining bright in every step you take. Let your